Hey YouTube, welcome to my channel. Let's make a dress together. It'll be fun. Grab your supplies and make sure you have a pattern ready. The pattern I'm using is one I made myself, so comment below if you're curious to see how I do that. I'm using a stretch knit here that I got years ago at Mood, but you can use whatever fabric you want for this. Keep in mind that we are using a fabric that has stripes, so when you lay your pattern out, you want to be able to cut it in such a way that the stripes will match up. Grab thread to match, and an invisible zipper for the back, because I want this dress to be fitted. And now it's time to cut. Lay your pattern pieces out on the table. As you can see with mine, the stripes do line up and the side seams are ready to be sewn. But first, let's mark the darts. There are a couple of different ways you can do this with tracing paper and a tracing wheel, but I prefer tailor's chalk because it's what my grandma used. If you choose to use tracing paper, you don't need to do this step, but if you do use tailor's chalk, I personally find it easier to cut the dart out and then trace directly inside the pattern. Time to sew your darts. Make sure that you pin your fabric in such a way that the stripes still match up. If your darts are straight and on grain, it should be no problem. Make sure you clip any loose threads. Now it's time to iron. If you have a pressing ham, now would be the perfect time to grab one. Press your darts up and to the left to ensure they lie as flat as possible on the right side. Pin your side seams so the stripes match up. I find it easiest to pin each individual stripe. Once you've finished pinning, go ahead and sew your side seams. I'm using a specific knit stitch on my machine. If you don't have that, a zigzag stitch will do just fine. Once you've finished your side seams, clip any extra seam allowance that you may have, and now you can start on your shoulder seams. Do your best to match the pattern up, but if you can't, don't sweat it. Make sure you always press as you go, because ironing is just as important a step as the actual sewing of your garment is. Friendly reminder, press all seams towards the center back. Now you're ready to sew your sleeves. Sew the side seams, and at this stage you can also sew the hem of your sleeves. I like to hem with a double needle, however if you don't have access to a double needle you can always do a zigzag stitch. Both of these methods are meant for knit fabrics, as a straight stitch would break as the fabric stretched. Pin and sew the top edge of your collar. Make sure that the stripes line up at the center front because this is the focal point of your design. Do your best to remove pins as you go because it'll be better for the pins and for your machine in the long run. Press your collar flat. You can use a pressing hand for this step. The next step is to pin your sleeves into your dress. Once you have everything pinned, you can start sewing, but take your time. Sewing curves is difficult, but you got this. Now that your sleeves are in your dress, you can press them. I've swapped my little pressing ham out for a bigger one, which will give me a nice clean press all across the shoulder seam. Now you can begin pinning and prepping the neckline of your dress. Make sure that your center front stripes match up because again, this is the focal point of your dress, so you want it to look good. Take your time, align your stripes, and get ready to sew. Attach your neckline to your dress and don't forget to remove the pins as you sew. Once you've attached your collar, top stitch the seam allowance down all the way around the neckline to ensure that your seam allowance lies flat when you wear it. It'll be more comfortable this way. Pin and sew your center back seam. In this case, because this is one of the few areas where you're going to be using a straight stitch, you can overlock your center back pieces because you won't be doing your normal knit stitch. Make sure you leave extra room at the top of your dress because you're inserting a zipper. This dress also has a back vent, so make sure that you sew the top edge of the vent and you clip your corner. Grab an invisible zipper foot because it's time to install your zipper. If you don't have an invisible zipper foot, a regular zipper foot will work just fine. Make sure your zipper is pinned to your dress. This will make it a little bit easier when you begin sewing because your zipper will be pinned in place. Leave about 1 centimeter of space at the bottom of your zipper. At this point, I went ahead and marked every single stripe on the center back of the dress on the zipper tape, so that way when I go and pin the other side of the zipper to the other side of the dress, the stripes will match up perfectly. Once you've gone ahead and done that, go ahead and pin your zipper onto your dress and begin sewing. Zip your zipper up and you can see the stripes lining up perfectly. Sew the zipper tape down to your seam allowance. Now it's time to finish your back vent. Roll your seam allowance in and pin, so that way your back vent will have a clean finish. Sew as close to the edge as possible. Do this to both sides. Sew a diagonal line at the top of the back vent to tack your seam allowance down and ensure that your vent lies flat. With your back vent mostly done, it's time for some of the final steps. I went ahead and overlocked the bottom edge of my dress, but if you don't have a serger, you can feel free and skip this step. Roll your hem up about 1/8 of an inch. I find that pressing in this stage makes it a lot easier when you go to sew it down. Once your hem is pressed, roll it about 1 inch up. Pin your stripes so that way they match up with the front. This will be your final hem. You can see that when you go ahead and sew, you won't have any overlock seams or raw edges visible. Go ahead and do a straight stitch here. Now it's time for the final touch. Grab a label if you have one and sew it in. Congratulations, you did it! If you've been sewing along with me, I would love to see what you've made. Shoot me a message on Instagram at LaurenLuciaDesigns. If you were just here to watch, thank you for joining me and I hope to see you back for the next one.